Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, dear learners. I am Professor Jasim Ahmed from IASC Faculty of Education, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today, I am going to deliver the lecture on the topic Learning as Construction of Knowledge. So, friends, today we will try to understand the detail about learning. And so, the objectives of today's discussion is that after the discussion is over, after this lecture, we will be in a position to define learning and what are the various approaches of learning. We will also try to describe learning as a construction of knowledge, and we'll discuss 5 E's approach of constructivist teaching learning. And in this context, we will also try to describe the role of teacher and learner in constructivist approach of teaching and learning. So first of all, we must understand what learning is. You must have studied that learning is basically defined by different psychologists in different ways. There is an entire series of approach of learning and various approaches of learning. Learning is defined in a different fashion, in a different ways. Some sort of definition tells that learning is nothing but it's a process of behavior modification. Some says that learning is nothing but the acquiring new knowledge and new information. Some say that learning is the process of acquisition of experiences, and acquiring new attitude, values, and beliefs are called as learning. Some also says that learning is nothing but the acquisition of habits and attitudes. But the most recent, approach and idea and the philosophy tells that learning is basically the construction of knowledge. So only those knowledge which is constructed by the learner themselves are termed as as a learning. So friends, first of all, we see the learning approaches. So there are 4 different approaches of learning, and the oldest among all these are the behavioristic approach of learning. All the theories under this approach focus on the behavior modification of the learner. And so the center of gravity of all the theories under behaviorist approach is on behavior modification, habit formation, providing experience to the learner, and development of new attitude, belief, and habits. You will find in different definitions given by behaviorists. For example, according to B.F. Skinner, learning is a process of progressive behavior adaptation. So as learners adapt into new behavior, learn new behavior, learn and modify their behavior in day-to-day life, they go on learning new things. Similarly, according to Crow and Crow, learning is the acquisition of habit, knowledge, and attitudes. So whenever a learner develops new habit, learn something new, acquire some new knowledge, and develop some attitudes, basically they are learning something. Similarly, according to Cronbach, learning is shown by change in behavior as a result of experience. So you are looking at all these 3 definitions. In all these 3 definitions, behavior is the focal point. So behaviorist approach of learning basically focus on the behavior modification, and this process of behavior modification, how the behavior is changed in an individual, is the process of learning. So there are different theories under this approach. Some of the theories are listed here. Trial and error theory given by E.L. Thorndike, classical conditioning by Pavlov, operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner, and Hull's systematic behaviorist theory. All these theory comes under behavioristic approach, and the focus, the center of gravity of all these approaches, all these theories, is behavior modification, that is the formation of a stimulus response bound. Formation of bound between the stimulus and responses, and due to this formation of bond between the stimulus and responses, learning takes place. So some other psychologists who do not believe in behaviorist approach, they criticize this approach in this way, that the focus is on a modification of behavior. This is a mechanical kind of approach or mechanical way of learning. As human being has been endured by human being has been given by Almighty, or by the nature, the highest power of understanding, the highest power of imagination, the power of thinking, the power of reasoning, the power of logic. And the behavioristic approach do not consider all these capabilities. Behaviorist approach are not manipulating or exploiting these skills of human being. That's why some of the psychologists do not believe in this behaviorist approach, and they have come up with new approach of learning. And the focus of this approach is basically on the development of, on the use of reasoning ability, the logical thinking, the power of imagination, and the cognitive abilities. That's why the new approach emerges after the behaviorist approach, and this approach is known as cognitivist approach of learning, where the focus is on the cognitive ability, the focus is on reasoning, the focus is on intelligence of the individual, the focus is on thinking and imagination power of the learner, the focus is on the ability to understand, ability to think, ability to imagine, and ability to try to understand, think very deeply. That's why the focus is changing from behavior modification, the mechanical approach, to the thinking approach or reasoning approach, or ability to think or reason or give logic and thinking into the detail of the content being learned. So when the focus of of learning getting changed from behavior to cognitive abilities, the new approaches emerges, and that is cognitivist approach of learning. Some of the important theories under cognitivist approach are insight theory of learning given by Kohler and his friend and his colleague, then the Levin's field theory, and Miller's information processing theory. These are the theories which focus on the use of mind, which focus on the use of ability of thinking, imagination, and reasoning. And that's why they think, and they advocate that human beings, the most important capability and potentiality, that is the ability to think, are being applied in the process of learning. But there is another, school of thought and another psychologist who oppose to this cognitivist approach, and they have their own thinking, they have their own ideas, and the ideas are not bad, because they think that, of course, a human being has been given, bestowed by a power of imagination and thinking. They must be used in the process of learning. But this humanistic approach thinks in a humanistic way, and they try to put learning in a fashion where learners needs becomes much more important. We, the human being, uh, do each and every kind of act to fulfill our needs. So needs are basic to all actions. Needs are the mother of inventions. This is very famous quotation. And we, all human beings, act to satisfy our needs. So this particular approach of learning, that is humanistic approach of learning, advocates that the learners need are very important, and the learners cannot be put to think, learners cannot be put to imagine something, learners cannot be put to have deeper thinking and reasoning if they are hungry, if their basic needs are not fulfilled. Uh, unless they are feeling themselves as a safe, unless they are feeling themselves to be secure, unless their basic needs are not fulfilled, they cannot be put on their ability of using their mind for certain new knowledge, or to understand something in a better way, or in a new way. So this approach of learning, that is humanistic approach of learning, focuses on the fulfilling of needs of the learners. First of all, fulfill the needs of the learners, and then go on and go ahead for their better education and better learning, and the learning of those contents and those values and those attitudes and those belief system which you want to develop in them. First of all, must try to understand that needs are important, and learners needs must be fulfilled before they are educated, before they are put to learn. That's why this entire approach is known as humanistic approach of learning. And two, three important theories under this approach are Carl Rogers' self-theory of personality and theory of experiential learning, and Abraham Maslow theory of need, which is one of the most important theory, also taught in management and leadership class and courses. There is a third theory in this series is Albert Bandura's social learning theory. So we as a teacher must try to understand this theory also, and whenever we teach, we must take care of the needs and aspiration of the learner so that they can put in a better position to learn a lot and to use their mind for better achievement. Now come to the last approach of learning, the present most important approach, and the approach of learning which is in practice nowadays, and which is being focused by by all the educationists at global level. And this is the constructivist approach of learning. This is the focus of our discussion in this presentation, in this lecture. So basically we try to give you a very simple glimpse of the earlier approaches of learning, and now we have reached to the point where we have to discuss in detail about the constructivist approach of learning. This approach is basically developed from the idea of Piaget, Jean Piaget, J.S. Brunner, Montessori, and Lev Vygotsky. All of these thinkers, all of these psychologists believe that knowledge is only that which is constructed by the learners, which is understood by the learners, which learners can explain in their own fashion, in their own way. So they suggest that people actively construct or make their own knowledge, and that reality is determined by the experiences of the learner. Arendt states that constructivism believes in personal construction of meaning by the learner through experience, and that meaning is influenced by the interaction of prior knowledge and new events. So, friends, all learners whom you are teaching in class 6 or class 7 or class 8 or class 9 or at any level of education, all learners must have their previous experiences. You want to give you some new knowledge, and the learners are supposed to develop a link between their previous knowledge and the new knowledge, new information. And this whole process is supposed to be facilitated by the teacher, and this whole process make all the learner, each and every learner in the classroom, to understand in their own fashion, in their own way. So they try to develop their meaning of that particular content being taught to them, and they make their own meaning in their different ways. And this is the process of construction of knowledge. Now try to understand what are the principles of constructivism. With the help of this principle, we can understand what actually constructivism is. So the first most important principle is that knowledge is constructed rather than absorbed or acquired passively. So as I have discussed in behavioristic approach, the approach was that knowledge is acquired, knowledge is absorbed, knowledge is crammed. So whatever information or whatever content are acquired by or crammed by the learner or absorbed by the learner without understanding them, that was considered to be learning in that approach. But here in this approach, knowledge is constructed means the knowledge which is constructed and not only crammed and not only absorbed passively. So those knowledge which are constructed by the learner are only considered as a knowledge, and the information or the content whatever teacher is trying to transfer to the learner, and if the learners have just absorbed that passively without understanding them, that is not learning in this approach of learning. The second one is learning is an active process. So learner is not an empty vessel. Means that the learners are required to involve very actively in the process of learning. So in the classroom, we as a teacher needs to involve each and every learner in the classroom in the process of learning. And involvement may be done in different ways. Any of the learner must not be sitting in the class very passively. Each and every learner must be involved in the process of learning. When they become involved in the process of learning, they become active, participant in the process of learning. And when they become active participant in the process of learning, they learn a lot. So learner should not be like an empty vessel. I mean to say that they should not be empty vessel means that something, some information, some principles, some theories, some chunk of information should not be put in the vessel and the cover is closed. And when the examination will be there, the learner will take that chunk of information outside and will write down on the basis of his memory. This is not learning at all. So constructivism say that learning is only is an active process, and knowledge is only constructed by the learner. Learners construct meaning only through active engagement with the world, makes meaning connections between prior knowledge, new knowledge, and the process involved in learning. So learners are trying to make a connection between their previous knowledge and the new knowledge, and in between the two there are various processes. All these processes needs to be learned by the teacher, and all these processes are need to be adopted by the learners, so that full involvement of all these students may be ensured in the process of teaching and learning. Then all knowledge is socially constructed. This is another important principle. All knowledge is socially constructed means that learning cannot be, done without being social in nature. So learning is a social activity. It is something we do together in interaction with each other rather than an abstract concept. One of the most important, type of constructivism is, social constructivism, where learners construct their knowledge through social interaction, through association, and through communication. Vygotsky believed that community plays a central role in the process of making meaning. So each and every learner try to make their own meaning of the content they are given to, and they are being discussed in the classroom, and whatever meaning each and every learner develop on their own. So these meaning for each and every learner may be different or may be shared, but these share or whatever they are thinking, they all they constitute for their own learning. Vygotsky also states that cognitive development stems from social interactions, from guided learning within the zone of proximal development, as children and their parents co-construct knowledge. So Vygotsky, basically the prominent psychologist in the field of social constructivism, and the theory of social construction of knowledge given by Vygotsky, and he advocated that children should be put within the zone of proximal development. Means children should not be put in their own zone where they can learn whatever they can learn on their own way, or should not be put in third zone where they can't learn anything without because no any assistance is there. So children should be kept between these two zones, and where some sort of assistance, some sort of help, some sort of guidance are available to the learner. If children is put in the in this middle zone, that is the zone of proximal development, the development will be highest for the learners, the children. Next principle is all knowledge is personal. As we have been discussing, that suppose you have 50 students in the classroom and you are teaching any concept like democracy or secularism or diffusion in science, or you are teaching like tropic of Cancer, tropic of Capricorn in geography, or in the subject of history you are teaching about the immediate cause of World War One. So you are discussing all these concepts with the entire 50 students of the class, and at the end of the class you will find that all the 50 students have developed their own understanding on the topic you have discussed in the classroom. So all these understanding and the meaning that each and every one has developed with your discussion and deliberation. So this particular understanding for a particular learner is basically learning for that particular individual. So this is the reason it is said that all knowledge is personal, and it is not common. Next principle is learning exists in the mind. That is, each learner constructs own interpretation of reality. The constructivist theory posits that knowledge can only exist within the human mind, and that it does not have to match any real world reality. Now, friends, try to see the concept of knowledge in constructivism. So, the philosophy of constructivism basically automatically reflects the concept of knowledge. or you can say the concept of knowledge, tells us the process of or method of teaching and learning. So the first most important concept of knowledge is that there is no knowledge independent of the meaning attributed to experience or constructed by the learners. So knowledge is not free from experience or constructed by the learners. Knowledge is only that which is understood, which is constructed by the learner themselves. It is not independent of the meaning provided by or attributed to experience by the learners on their own. The next one is knowledge construction, means that the students construct their own knowledge through the active participation in the process of learning by seeking to find their own meaning in their experiences. Therefore, teachers are required to develop an environment in the classroom where each and every learner participates in the process of learning. Then the third one, knowledge is dynamic, not static. This is another most important concept of knowledge in this particular approach of learning, that is constructivism, that all knowledge is dynamic. This means that knowledge is never static. Knowledge go on changing uh, uh, each day or each month, or you can say as the research goes on, as the understanding of human being develops, as the understanding develops of the scholars or the researchers in a particular area of knowledge. All knowledge go on changing depending upon the research, depending upon the thinking, depending upon the researches, depending upon the imagination, and depending upon your way of thinking and imagination. So knowledge is never static. It always goes on changing, and it is dynamic in nature. Now try to see four epistemological assumption of constructivism. When we talk about epistemological, means the study of development of knowledge, how knowledge is created, how knowledge is developed. So this is epistemological assumption of constructivism, and the first one is knowledge is physically constructed by learners. That is, learners construct their knowledge through physical involvement in the process of learning, in the classroom or in the schooling premises or wherever they are. So each and every learning takes place with the physical involvement of the learners in the process of learning. The second one is knowledge is symbolically constructed by learners who make their own representation of actions. So sometimes when the physical involvement is not possible, then they construct their knowledge in a symbolic fashion, in a symbolic manner. Then the third, epistemological assumption is that knowledge is socially constructed by learners who convey their meaning making to others. As I already pointed out, that Lev Vygotsky's main focus was social construction of knowledge. So the more interaction in between the students, the more interaction of the learner between other members of the society, among the classmates, with the members of the family, with the members of the community, with the members of the society. So the more the children interact with the society, with the community, with the classmates, the more they learn, and this is social construction of knowledge. Then the fourth assumption is that knowledge is theoretically constructed by learners who try to explain things they don't completely understand. So the more you theoretically construct, the more you explain things, the more you learn. So these are the four epistemological assumptions of constructivism. Now, try to see the constructivist epistemology. The first one is knowledge is a way of making sense of experiences. The same process or product may be experienced by many, but knowledge about that process or product may vary for all individuals, as they all may sense and perceive them differently. Knowledge is not something concrete outside the individual which may be swallowed and digested as we feed something. Then knowledge is always an interpretation. So interpretation depends on individuals' ability, their intelligence, their previous experiences, their past and prevailing situation, the creativity of the learner, the vertical and horizontal thinking of the learners. All these influence knowledge construction by the learners. Therefore, knowledge is always open to uncertainty. It varies with time. It is never permanent, as it is always open to question. Then learning and knowledge is a personal and private activity, as we have already discussed. Then the fourth one is knowledge is a construction of reality. According to Taylor, human knowledge is a process of personal cognitive construction or invention undertaken by the individual who is trying to make sense of his social or natural environment. And next is knowledge acquisition or learning is not the transfer of nuggets of truth as referred by Kelly in 1995 to the individual, but a personal construction of knowledge by the learners on their own. Then learning is determined by the interplay among learners' existing knowledge, their social context, their teaching learning environment, and the problem that is to be solved through the process of teaching and learning. Now come to the three main types of constructivism. And before we discuss the three main types of constructivism, try to see what are the core characteristics of constructivism. Although we have discussed some of the core characteristics, but still, yeah, it is better to list out all those here. So first one is that knowledge is constructed rather than transmitted or acquired. The second one is knowledge construction takes place through the process of reflective thinking and reflective abstraction. Third one is learning process or construction of knowledge is facilitated by learners' cognitive structures. Fourth one is learners' cognitive structure is continuously constructed and reconstructed. And the last one is construction of knowledge or learning needs constructivist method and pedagogy of learning, which we will take up in the later during this presentation. So now see the three main types of constructivism, and the first one is cognitive constructivism. This constructivism is based on the philosophy, on the idea of Jean Piaget, and according to this constructivism, knowledge is actively constructed by learners based on their existing cognitive structure and its progressive development. You must have studied in the mental development of given by Jean Piaget that there are four stages of cognitive development of the learners. The first one is sensory motor stage, the second one is pre-operational stage, the third one is concrete operational stage, and the fourth one is formal operational stage. So from birth to 18 or 19 years of age, that is when they become mature, these four stages are there with each and every learner, and as they go through their ages, as they move from one stage to another, their cognitive structure is changing, and so the process of their thinking, process, imagination, the cognitive abilities are changing, and with these changes in the cognitive abilities, they are also changing the pace of their learning, and they are trying to put their cognitive abilities onto the learning in a better fashion. So through Jean Piaget also advocates that through assimilation, accommodation, and adaptation, children learn. So these are three most important, cognitive processes according to Piaget, that people, the learners, try to assimilate new things into their cognitive structure, and if they easily assimilate new information into their existing cognitive structure, then it is fine. But if they feel some problem, if they feel some difficulty in assimilation, if they feel some imbalance and some disequilibrium, then they try to accommodate the new information by trying to find out something in their this existing structure which can imbibe, which can absorb the new information. And so in the mind of the learner, there is some sort of changes in the schema, some sort of changes in the cognitive structure, and due to these changes, maybe that the new information gets something which may absorb and which may find some relation, so that the new information are finally assimilated into the cognitive structure. And the third one is when the new information is totally assimilated, then that particular new information becomes the part of the cognitive structure and are adapted for the new knowledge and for the new information, for the new process of learning which comes in the way. So the entire process of this cognitive structure, assimilation, accommodation, adaptation, and the entire mental activities focuses on meaning making process. That is the whole center of gravity is that the learners try to find out their own meaning, whatever is reaching to them through teacher, through environment, or through any medium to the learners. And they work on the ideas. The basis of the cognitive psychology is basically the idea on which the learners are supposed to work, and they have to develop their own meaning in their own fashion. And the teachers and the parents, the classmates, the society, the community act as a facilitator in the process of this community, constructivism, this kind of learning. Now, the second important constructivistic approach or constructivism is social constructivism. As the name suggests, the constructivism or the construction of knowledge, wherein the social interaction becomes the most important part, wherein the social interaction plays the central role in the process of learning, is basically social constructivism. And this was developed by Lev Vygotsky in 1978. And the focus of this constructivism is basically that learning is a collaborative process. So, in the process of learning, children learn through collaboration. So, the more they collaborate with their teacher, the more they collaborate with their friends, classmates, the more they collaborate with their parents, the more they collaborate with their seniors, the more they learn. So the social interaction is supposed to be raised in the process of learning. Social association is supposed to be raised in the process of learning. And so he said that knowledge develops from individuals' interaction with their culture and society. So the more the learners interact with the society, interact with the culture, the more they learn the things they're supposed to learn. Not only they learn the content of their curriculum in a better way, but they also understand the society, the social values, the social ethics, and the content of culture, the cultural ethics, the cultural values in which they are living. So, knowledge is always constructed within a certain social setting and has social context as well. So, for each and every content we are teaching to the child, we must try to relate it, to integrate it with the social context of the content, so that as students can easily integrate their learning with the social context. They can learn in a better fashion. So, in this particular social constructivism, social interaction plays the most important role, wherein cooperation of teacher, cooperation of classmates, cooperation of family members, and cooperation of the members of the society and school setup are very important. The students are supposed to develop a social association within the school and out of the school, within the classroom and out of the classroom, so that they can learn in a better way. Lev Vygotsky also developed some important concept like how to have social interaction. For social interaction, he has advocated that a student should have interaction with MKO, more knowledgeable other. So for each and every learner, there are people in the society, in the community, in the family, who are more learner to that particular learner. For example, teachers are more learner for each and every learner. The seniors are more knowledgeable other. Parents are more knowledgeable other in certain ways for certain type of content. So whosoever is more knowledgeable other for any particular content, for any subject area of study, the more you interact with those more knowledgeable other people, the more you will learn. And he also developed and given the concept of zone of proximal development, which I have already mentioned in the previous discussion, that we should put the child in between the zone that is zone of proximal development. He should not be, he should not be put to his own, status and put to himself only, and they should not be given any kind of assistance at all. If you put the child in this situation, he will be not going, he is not going to learn much better. And similarly, if you give all kinds of support to the learner, so there are a number of tuitions, tuition in all subjects are given, all facilities are given, there may be problem. And so put the child in between the two. Lev Vygotsky suggested that every function in the child's cultural development appears twice, first on the social level and later on the individual level. First between people, that is interpsychological, and then inside the child, that is intrapsychological. Now come to the third type of constructivism, which is radical constructivism, which was developed by E.V. Glaserfeld in 1974. According to this constructivism, all knowledge is constructed rather than perceived through senses. Knowledge that is created by individuals tells us nothing about reality and only helps us to function in your environment. Thus, knowledge is invented, not discovered. The humanly constructed reality is all the time being modified and interacting to fit ontological reality, although it can never give a true picture of it. Now, friends, come to the 5 E's of constructivist methodology of teaching. That is, we have already discussed about the approach or the philosophy behind constructivistic approach. We have seen the concept of knowledge. We have also seen how the teaching learning process goes on. And now try to just look at it, that what are the 5 E's of constructivist method of teaching. So these are the 5 E's. First one is engage, the next one is explore, third is explain, fourth is elaborate, and fifth is evaluate. And it means that each and every teacher teaching any subject, be it science or social science or language, we as teacher are required to use all these 5 processes in the in classroom teaching learning. So we have to engage our learners in the classroom in learning process, and for that we need to develop an environment wherein learners can be engaged in the activity, engaged in the process of learning, engaged in the discussion and deliberation in the classroom. Now they should be put to explore, means learners should be put to discover something on their own, to explore the things they are supposed to learn, and teacher should be facilitating the process of exploration. Then third one is explain, means teacher will also explain, but first let the learners explain whatever they have they have explored and whatever they have learned through the process of engagement. So first let the learners explain whatever they have experienced through engagement and through their exploration, and then the teacher will refine explanation in their own way. So whatever students are explaining, let them elaborate, which is the another level, wherein the learners will be try to integrate whatever they have learned through engagement, through exploration, and through explanation with their daily life, with their social life. So whatever content they have learned, they are supposed to integrate with their social life, with their family life, and with their culture, so that it may be understood by the teacher that yes, the students have learned. And the fourth one is evaluation. The students are supposed to evaluate their own learning. At the same time, teachers are supposed to evaluate the learning of the learners, as well as teacher have to evaluate himself or herself also, that up to what extent they have performed in the classroom teaching learning process. Now, friends, see the most important thing, that is role of teachers in the constructivist approach of teaching and learning. So now I'm going to say some of the important points which should be taken into consideration by all of us, all the teachers teaching in be a teacher training colleges, or all the teachers who are teaching in a school setup. If we are supposed to follow, and if we are in a position, if we try to follow the constructivist approach of teaching, then the role will be different from those teachers who follow behavioristic approach of teaching. So for constructivist approach of teaching, some of the important points are that you have to create a collaborative problem solving environment in the classroom as well as in the school. You have to make students active participants in their own learning in the classroom. They should not be passively sitting at the benches and listening to the teachers. No, they are supposed to participate and actively participate in the discussion, in the deliberation, in the activity being conducted in the classroom. Then the third one is you as a teacher should act as a facilitator rather than an instructor, as we do in the behavioristic approach of teaching and learning. The teacher makes sure that she understands the students' pre-existing conceptions and guides the activity to address them and then build on them, their further teaching learning process. We also should provide a scaffolding which include modeling a skill, providing hints or cues, and adapting material or activity so that the students can learn in a better way and they can develop the concept on their own. Then you as a teacher must encourage learners to bring up on the table their ideas, because we have already discussed that previous ideas, previous experiences are the key to learning in this particular approach of learning. So teachers' responsibility is to bring all those students' ideas onto the forefront in the classroom while teaching learning is going on. Now be careful regarding children's existing ideas and also regarding the difference between those ideas and their scientific explanation. It is very important that we should take care of this. Then the ideas of the learners are needed to be valued by the teacher and must be encouraged to critically evaluate and raise questions on established understanding. We as a teacher must do the process of evaluation so that they should not aim to judge or label students in the process of evaluation. That is, evaluation should not aim to judge or label students as a whole. It should serve as a tool so that students reflect upon their prior knowledge and the new knowledge that they are constructing in the ongoing learning process. The teacher should encourage students to learn how to learn. So this is very important thing. There are many students who work very hard. They devote much time in the process of learning, much time on reading, much time on cramming some facts or some principles, some theories, but they are not having good, experience, or you can say that the way learning takes place. So it is very essential on the part of the teacher that they should encourage students to learn how to learn. So learning techniques must be taught to them. How new knowledge, new information can be developed. This has to be, taught to the learner, and learners need to be trained in this particular aspect. The National Curriculum Framework 2005 promotes constructivist approach for teaching learning. Teachers may use many models under this approach, such as generative learning model, which was given in 1985. They may use a problem-based learning model, and we have already discussed about 5E's model of constructivist teaching and learning. So, friends, we have discussed a lot about the constructivism as a process of learning, as an approach of learning. We have discussed knowledge that which is self-constructed. So only whatever our learners learn through their own construction of knowledge, only that is learning. Whatever they are, absorbing without understanding, whatever they are cramming for the examination purpose, are not learning. It should be understood by teachers as well as learners. Learning is basically a meaning making process. So we as teacher must help the learners to develop, to make their own meaning of their experiences they are getting in the classroom or out of the classroom. Teacher is not central, rather than learners are central in the teaching learning process. So this is basically upside down. The table is turned. In behavioristic approach, teacher was at the center, wherein constructivistic approach, learners is occupying the central position. They are the heart and soul of the learning process. According to learners' needs, learner aspiration, learner engagements, and their interests, we have to mold our teaching learning process. Then knowledge is not static, as we have discussed in the presentation, but ever changing. And so teachers are also required to change their own way of teaching, change their own depth of knowledge, change their pedagogy, change their methodology, and change their skills of teaching and learning process. Only then they can be succeeded in their attempt to build the nation and build the career of the learners. Three main types of constructivism we have discussed. That is cognitive constructivism, where the focus is on the cognitive structure, the use of the cognitive structure, the use of the cognitive abilities. The second one was the social constructivism, where the social construction was the focal point, and the third one was radical constructivism. We have also discussed the 5E's model of constructivist teaching, and finally we have also discussed the role of teachers in using constructivist approach of teaching and learning. So, friends, I hope you must have understood the entire discussion and deliberation. With this, I thank you all and wish you to see in the next presentation. Thank you so much.